Putin threatens to turn off the gas taps to Europe unless we pay Russia in roubles. Tonight, European leaders united in their condemnation of what they're calling blackmail, as the head of Britain's armed forces suggests that Putin's already effectively lost the war. The fighting continues near Kyiv despite Russia's claims of a withdrawal. We have an eyewitness report from the outskirts of the capital.
The soldiers who were escorting us have just gone over there and we just heard a gunshot. I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Good evening. President Putin has tonight issued a hostile ultimatum to Europe. Pay for Russian gas in roubles or the taps will be shut off. It is the latest salvo between Putin and the countries who've imposed hard-hitting sanctions following his invasion of Ukraine. Now, those sanctions have hit the ruble hard, and this is being seen as a desperate attempt to shore up Russia's currency. Now, the UK government is refusing to bow to his demands. So too are France and Germany, who've described them as blackmail. But Russia currently supplies more than a third of all gas bought by Europe. And for some countries, there's not an easy alternative. Now, it all came as the head of Britain's armed forces said Putin had already lost the war in Ukraine. Here's Geraint Vincent.
He has watched as Western countries have wrapped the Russian economy in sanctions. And in a meeting with Russian business leaders today, Vladimir Putin delivered a response. More than a third of Europe's gas supplies come from Russia. The Russian president told buyers in so-called unfriendly countries, pay in roubles and help to prop up the Russian currency, or those contracts will not be honoured. It is a new front in the economic warfare between Russia and the West, but in the actual war on the ground in Ukraine, the front lines may be changing. Ukrainian forces are reoccupying ground they lost in the early days of the Russian assault, and as they discover yet more Russian hardware destroyed or abandoned by the roadside. This assessment from the British military of the invaders' shortcomings.
In many ways, Putin has already lost. Far from being the far-sighted manipulator of events that he would have us believe, Putin has damaged himself through a series of catastrophic misjudgments.
The government in Moscow will be in no doubt as to the tactics it is employing in the war it is waging in Ukraine's cities and towns. The state-run TV channel Russia Today says this video was filmed in Mariupol. It shows a Russian tank firing at apartment buildings. The Ukrainian government has claimed that a convoy of 45 buses that it sent to the devastated city to rescue trapped residents was denied access by Russian soldiers. At a press conference this afternoon, Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister agreed that Russia's generals might be lying to their president about the battlefield situation, but that in the online world, the suffering of Ukrainians would be impossible for Russia's people to ignore. Mr. Putin has made clear the bombardment of Mariupol will not stop until the city's defenders surrender. And, says the president, the conditions are not yet right for a ceasefire. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Western Ukraine.
OK, well, let's talk more about that threat by President Putin to turn off the gas supply to Europe tomorrow. And our economics editor, Joel Hills, is here. Joel, what would that mean? It's a pretty alarming threat, isn't it? What would it mean? What would happen?
We must remember, Mary, that the sanctions imposed on Russia so far haven't applied to energy. So throughout this war, in fact, throughout the Cold War, Russia continued to supply Europe with gas. There are several major pipelines which carry gas from Russia to Europe. Two of them run through Ukraine. Last year, Russia supplied Europe with 38% of the gas it used. Germany, Italy, countries in Eastern Europe are particularly reliant. The UK far less so. Russia sold 140 billion cubic metres of gas to Europe in 2021. At current market prices, that's worth 150 billion euros. That is a lot of money. Turn off the taps, Russia hurts itself. That's why I think the UK authorities think Putin is bluffing. There are, in theory, alternatives to Russian gas. Liquefied natural gas could be shipped in from Qatar to ports in Western Europe. There are also major pipelines bringing gas across from North Africa and from Norway. But all of these are running at capacity. Analysts think that if Russia does cut off the taps, the price will soar and governments across Europe will have to impose rationing on people to lower demand.
All right. So if you said some people suggest he might be bluffing, do you think he will do this?
Well, as of tomorrow, in theory, Mary, Western companies have to make payments into accounts with Gazprom Bank, which will be transferred into roubles. In practice, there appears to be something in the decree which allows for a transition period, so we don't really know what deadline the Kremlin's planning on enforcing. We don't know also if European countries will agree to this. Russia's doing it in some ways to try to support its currency.
OK, interesting stuff. Joel, thank you very much for that. Well, the head of Britain's armed forces, you heard about in Geraint's report, also cast doubt on Russian claims that it was withdrawing from Kyiv. And ITV News has evidence that he may be right. Our team spoke to Ukrainian soldiers defending a key route into the capital. Now, one of the fighters told us they'd been involved with a gun battle with Russians just last night. Our team went to the outskirts of the capital, and a warning that this report from our correspondent Dan Rivers contains images you may find upsetting.
On the road to Kyiv, the dead still lie where they fell. The main highway here leads to the capital from the west, a strategic artery Russia has repeatedly tried to advance along, but one the Ukrainians have fiercely defended. The importance of this route is literally etched in stone here. This is a monument to the men who held it against a German advance in 1941. 8 decades later, Ukrainians are again holding off an enemy trying to infiltrate the capital. The Ukrainian army has blown the bridge over the River Irpin, but that hasn't stopped raids by Russian reconnaissance patrols up this otherwise empty highway. A local civil defense fighter who used to work in finance and who doesn't want to be identified tells me how they fought off up to 16 of them last night.
They know where we are, but we are strong line and we push them back.
Do you think you can win this war?
Of course. We have no chance. We must win this war.
Suddenly his men spot movement in the woods. We're told to take cover.
The soldiers who were escorting us have just gone over there and we just heard a gunshot. Not quite sure what's going on, but I think they obviously think someone might be coming through the woods towards us.
Whatever it was has gone. The police are given the all clear to advance and assess whether the body on the road is booby-trapped. A few minutes later, we're allowed to move forward to a petrol station the Ukrainians say was looted by the Russians. Ukrainians claim these were the bizarre satanic symbols the Russians left on the floor. The Ukrainians tell us the Russians ransacked the shop and emptied the cash machine. Although this bridge has been blown up by the Ukrainians, the battle for this highway is not over. The Russians continue to probe along it daily. Russian shelling here has been relentless. The damage is astonishing. And from here you can glimpse the town of Irpin, where Ukraine claims it's pushed back Russian forces. Its residents, like Maria, continue to flood out, relieved to have survived the horror of the last few weeks.
Очень тяжело было, солнца не видно, все было в дыму. И на глазах горели дома, и спать не давались. И взрывы эти, мы бегали куда хороших, стекол нигде нету, побито все.
Among the injured and infirm, we find a mother and daughter, thankful for their survival from the worst of this war.
Bombs every day. I lived in under a house. It is terrible and very bad.
Irpin's mayor says the town is now under Ukrainian control, but landmines make the journey out potentially lethal.
І ми вводили групу переді мною за 50 метрів, зірвалися 2 дитини, мама і волонтер.
The people of Irpin have been cut off without electricity or a phone signal for weeks. Only now are they able to tell their stories and tell their loved ones they're still alive. Dan Rivers, ITV News, near Irpin.